Okay, so welcome back. We have seen episode 2 of Arcane. The show is just as amazing as I thought it was, and we're going to talk about it. So if you haven't seen the show yet, what are you doing here? Get out of here. Go watch it. Check it out. It's like, honestly, with the way the pacing has been moving, I'm probably just going to go ahead and just commit and say it's probably going to be the best show I've seen in the last decade. And I don't think that's going to be an understatement. So far, Arcane has been delivering. So, if you haven't seen the show, this review is going to be filled with spoilers. Quick disclaimer, there are going to be spoilers in here. So if you don't care, feel free to stay. We're going to be talking about it. So let's just get started. So in episode 2, we got introduced to a couple more players that I knew were going to make an appearance at some point, and I totally called it. I was right. It was Jace on the other end of the door that Vi, Powder, Clagger, and Milo, whose penthouse they robbed and took all his stuff and caused that big explosion. We open up the scene with a young Jace. Apparently after he got, blasted through from the other end of the door when the explosion went off, he kind of like had a flashback to his childhood when he was in the Freljord for some reason with his mom, and they were about to die in a blizzard because they were caught there with no way out. And it just so happens that a wandering mage saved Jace's life and used magic in front of him. And let me say this, in media, I've never seen magic depicted quite like this. League of Legends has a way of showing magic in a way that really I just haven't seen in any other type of media at all, which is, I don't know, I guess it's just a testament to the amazing art direction that this series took. Because my first instinct when I saw the Lone Mage, I was like, oh wow, are they introducing Rise in this story too? Because yeah, he has tattoos and he's carrying a rune stone, but knowing Rise, the Rise we have in the game, he probably wouldn't have even shown the magic. He probably just would have left them to die, because that's something Rise totally would do. And let alone let Jace keep the stone. Yeah, that's totally not Rise, but hey, it's fun to speculate if it is. But anyway, this mage saves Jace's life. A beautiful display of magic, like it's pretty cool. You should check out the scene. Everything's like glowing blue. You see the runes. Another reason, if it was Rise could just teleport them out. Rise is special in a way that he doesn't need rune stones. Rise is pretty much like a living battery, since he's like a living rune himself, because he spends so much time collecting the world runes and absorbing their magic, and that's what turned them blue in the first place. One of my favorite champions in the game. Next to Victor, and we'll get to him, because my boy Victor makes an appearance too. So anyway, they get teleported out of the blizzard to someplace warm, and the mage lets Jace keep the rune stone that he used, because it's out of magic, and what's Jace gonna do? Not much anything, and it's not like Jace can use magic, haha. So this, we learn, is the motivation for what Jace wants to do for the world. He wants to change it by introducing magic to it for the people who can't use it, to make life easier, to save lives, and it's really admirable. I'll touch on that a little bit more when we get to Jace's trial. So, we flash forward and we're back in, well, pretty much where we started at the beginning, to the destroyed apartment. Jace is in trouble because apparently the research he was working on was not authorized by the council at all. He had a bunch of illegal equipment in there without any permits. We found out in episode 1 that he got most of that contraband from down in Zon, where he paid gold for it from Little Man, aka Echo. So yeah, he's in trouble from that. And who else is there? Victor. We get introduced to Victor. No, we don't get Victor's name until the very end, but we know it's Victor. Like, who else could he be? And he even has his cane. It's just, that's just the character. But I love Victor. Victor has been ordered to, seize anything that's dangerous, including Jace. So Jace gets his whatchamacallit, everything that's legal in his apartment taken, and even himself. He gets pretty much placed in fountain until he's let out. So next with that, we are introduced to Heimerdinger, which was a welcome surprise because League did a thing where Yordles were kind of like in the lore. They didn't really have a set place. It was Corki and it was Heimerdinger who were pretty much like the founders of Piltover. Corki was, I wonder if Corki's still up here now. He pretty much like revolutionized like the air fleet or whatever it was. Heimerdinger pretty much helped build Piltover from the ground up, just like Poppy helped build Demacia. So yeah, Heimerdinger's a founder, and apparently walking around in the open without any glamour, I think that's a slight retcon. I think the creatives just said, yeah, we're just gonna do away with glamour. It makes much more sense that they know Yordles are around, because in the lore, the Yordles were at least hunted, I guess, and they lived for a very long time. They were even around for like the Rune Wars, and they just escaped it because I guess the Yordle realm is just kind of weird. And then you have like in between worlds like the Glade, the Death realm where Mord is at, so on and so forth. Heimerdinger's been around for, and he's kind of unreliable when he tells us his age, which is around 300 years old, but he references events that happened like thousands of years before, you know, before the main storyline, right? So he might have just been around to see the Rune Wars. So yeah, Heimer meets with Jace. You know, and he's just as quirky as I thought he'd be. In the series, they really nailed Heimerdinger's character, but something to note that's not in the game, they added layers to Heimerdinger's character I didn't expect that we would get, because Heimerdinger's this science-loving Yordle, and most definitely not the mad scientist type that I expected him to be, really. In fact, now that I'm on that, Heimerdinger even seems quite removed from his in-game counterpart, because here he doesn't really, he's talking like a scientist, but most of what I saw from Heimerdinger, that love for experimentation and pushing boundaries, that's not there. That's more so in Jace and Victor, and I'll touch on that later. But I guess that's just a layer they added onto his characters, because he's been around a long time and he's seen some things, particularly concerning magic. And when Jace tries to share his discovery, well, his research with Heimerdinger pretty much shuts him down and says, you know, just renounce magic, never work on magic again, and you might just get away with a slap on the wrist during your trial. So he pretty much shuts Jace down, which I thought was kind of sad. So moving on to that, we are introduced to more players in the story before I touch on that council scene, because the characters that we see them now, they're not the same characters that we know from the game, and their personalities have not quite blossomed into the characters that we know quite yet. Particularly Jace and Victor, not quite yet. Just like with Vi and Powder, we're building up there. We're gonna get there eventually. When the pot boils over, it's gonna get everywhere. So yeah, I'll hold off on the council scene because we move on to the next scene with the kids again. Let's see. With the kids, it's Vi, Powder, Clagger, and Milo. They're laying low because what happened in episode 1, the Piltover enforcers are starting to crack down on the people of Zon looking for these kids, because they said, you know, the higher ups the people don't feel safe. Someone needs to pay for what they did, and so on and so forth. So they're cracking down on people, bullying them, like arresting people, and just overall just being dicks, like to the people of Zon. Right? So naturally that's stirring up a lot of civil unrest. And so you have the kids laying low, and Jinx, I mentioned it before, actions have consequences, right? That was established in episode 1, and small details in the decisions that these characters make carry over in big ways, honestly. Like the decision of the decision Vi made to have Powder keep those unstable crystals, even though they did not know what they were. The decision of Vander to keep the little bottle that what's her name? The other enforcer, I'm totally forgetting her name, Grayson, gave him. Vander didn't get rid of that, which makes me wonder, like, was Vander ever gonna... Nah, he wouldn't turn his kids in. If anything, I think Vander's the type to give himself up before he were to ever, like, betray one of his own, because Vander has been keeping the peace since we find out in this episode he actually founded the Underground. And Vander used to be like a shady dude, but like from what we know about the war, he changed his ways. I'm growing more and more certain that Vander is going to become warlord by the end of this, somehow, some way. But anyway, so we get to see them hanging out just a little bit, and we get to see the strengths of the character. We already know Milo's good at lockpicking, Flagger's a tank, but we get to see a little bit of what Jinx can do. While Vi's good at punching and hand-to-hand combat, Milo's not so good at shooting, but Jinx, I'm sorry, I keep saying Jinx, she's not Jinx yet. Powder is very good with the gun. She's good with ranged weapons, like an ADC. She's just little right now, right? She's good at tinkering, she's good at gizmos and gadgets and ranged weapons, even though she might not be as physically capable because she's smaller than they are naturally. And we see her skills on display when she's shooting all the targets and nailing them. Perfect bullseyes. The fun doesn't last long because a person gets flung through the glass and the Piltover enforcers see the kids and they have them search the kids. Powder still has the crystals in her back pocket, so they have to run. And, you know, it's a cool chase sequence because Vi realizes, oh, shoot, we didn't get rid of the crystals. I let Powder hang on to them. Actions have consequences, right? So they kill the lights and they make a break for it. And I call it League Vision. While they were running, I just can't help notice references to their in-game abilities while they were running away, particularly Jinx's E, her little chomper traps that you know, that stop your movement in game. While a guard grabbed her, she like activated like one of the chomper targets and it like clamped down on one of the guard's arms to like kind of keep him in place. I was like, that was totally a reference to her in-game ability before she becomes like Jinx and stuff. So anyway, they get away thanks to Little Man Echo coming in clutch and helping them get away and saying what I've said since the beginning. They should have hit those crystals. So flash forward to the next scene, which is Counselor. We get introduced to a new character. Her name is Counselor Medarda, right? Who apparently is the richest woman in Piltover I've never heard of, right? We even get references to Clan Pharos, which is Camille's clan. You know, Scissor Legs, the Scissor Granny, I guess. She has like scissors. She has like knives for legs. She's pretty cool. She's a cool champion. Love the sass. Love the sass. I wonder if she's gonna make an appearance here as well. But anyway, we get introduced to Medarda. And something of note is she seems to be ambitious, and I'm not sure why yet. She's a new champion, not a champion. She's a new character, and she says she wants to put Piltover on them, right? And she takes a particular interest in Jace and is asking questions like, "Oh, does Heimerdinger favor him? Oh, interesting. I wonder what he has to bring to the table. What he comes from a family of tool makers who made the adjustable socket wrench. Interesting. Okay." So while she's doing this, she's looking at a couple like of doodads and gizmos that are on this table, and she picks up a cube I guess the appraiser or something, says, "Oh, that's a very complex one, excellent choice," but she puts it down and she chooses the simpler one, and she's like, "What? That one? But that's a toy." And she's like, "Perfect." We're gonna find out why that is in a second. But something to know: she said she's the richest woman in Piltover, and yet she's the poorest Medarda. So I have questions about this lady. I don't know. She just gives me vibes I felt some in another region, and that was her only scene. I'm just like, that doesn't sound familiar. But we'll learn who she is in due time. But yeah. Moving on to Jace's trial scene. We find out what that toy was for. He uses. So here's how Medarda works. She's very politically savvy, as we see how she gives the toy to another counselor for his birthday. You know, just, "Oh, I thought about you, and here I got you this. It's for the most. It's made for the sharpest of minds." Just buttering him up. And you get to see how that works out in her favor during Jace's trial. So the trials, it was a pretty funny scene. He gets offered some nuts and he's like, "I'm allergic, you imbecile." But anyway, Jace's trial is starting. And before that, actually, let me stop. So before that scene starts, we get a flashback to the Kiramans, which is Caitlyn's family, right? Because we finally get introduced to Caitlyn proper. She's in the show as well, and she was heading back to Jace's. She was with Jace when all of this happened, right? Her story hasn't really taken off yet. I know her story really starts when she becomes like an enforcer, properly, right? And the penthouse that blew up was actually like, I guess that was funded by the Kiramans as well. Because it turns out that they are Jace's sponsors that were sponsoring him and funding his research and his equipment and the lab he needed and everything. So they have an obligation to show up to the trial and try and defend Jace, and also to protect their own name as well, right? So during Jace's trial, it starts, and Heimerdinger brings up the accusations. Everyone's kind of like shitting on Jace, saying, "Oh, the work you're doing was dangerous. Why did you have all this contraband in your apartment? What were you trying to do?" Jace holds his tongue, doing as Heimerdinger says, and just staying quiet. And it's like, "I know what I did was wrong, and I ask for your forgiveness." And while the counselors are talking amongst each other, talking about how, for what he did, he should be exiled and whatever, and saying that, and going back and forth, Heimer's trying to defend him and just give him a slap on the wrist or whatever. But the other counselors are acting much more hastily and trying to just banish him from the city, I guess. Jace is overhearing this, and when I said that this isn't Jace proper that we know yet, because as we know from the lore, Jace is, he's an infamous dick in the lore. He's not there quite yet, but you get hints of it through his own dialogue. Right? In Jace's lore, he's the smartest person in the room, and he knows it, and he's gonna let you know, right? Because he's just that good. Everyone else is slow to him, right? So I can imagine Jace's face. You can just see it on Jace's face, these idiots, they're so close-minded. I'm trying to change the world. I know best. I'm smart. I know I can make this happen. I just need a chance to do it, right? Because we got introduced to Jace's motivation, and while these people are just talking amongst themselves, Jace just loses it. He snaps and he just starts going off and telling them, "I was trying to create magic." And they're like, "What? What do you mean you were trying to create magic? Magic is an innate thing. It can't be fabricated by science." But Jace knows better, right? He's like, "It can be done. I know it can be done." And then this gets, notably, this gets Counselor Medarda's interest. She's like, oh, what do you have to show for your work then? To which she says, I don't. Everything I kind of just went up in smoke in the lab. So they kind of just shoot down his idea. And Jace, and while they're talking amongst themselves, again, Jace goes off and he's like, I've seen what magic can do. It saved my life when I was younger. And think of the wonders we can do and the good we can do for the city if we were to harness this. I know it can, but before Jace finishes like his speech and starts really taking off, because I believe if Jace had finished, he would have changed their minds. They would have given him another chance. But Heimerdinger works against Jace. He completely shuts him down. Because that's not what they agreed upon. This is what I mean when I say Heimer's pretty close-minded. It's understandable because it's shades of gray, because you get where Heimerdinger's coming from, right? Because he goes into his own backstory about how he's seen what magic can do when wielded in the wrong hands. You know, it destroys everything and it consumes, and yeah, it's this destructive force that just can't be messed with, especially by people. And Heimer's right. Like, I want to say Heimer's right, but he's also wrong. Jace's heart is in the right place, and Heimer's heart is in the right place as well. You can't, like, the whole scene is made to get you to like sympathize with Jace and his struggle, but if you look at it from Heimer's perspective, who's lived for thousands of years, not even 300, that's in Yordle years. In human years, he's lived for thousands of years, because the scene he references, I'm assuming that was either the fall of Shurima when Zeref rose to power, or the Rune Wars when the Void got released, or at some point. It was probably in Shurima, but I just assumed because there was a floating figure up there, it was either Zeref or someone else. But I assume it was during the Ascension Wars or the Rune Wars. Either or. At some point, I'm assuming the Void opened. Someone summoned the Void, probably the fall of Acathia at some point, because that line about magic can consume everything, that's a buzzword that makes me immediately think, oh, Heimer's seen the Void, he's seen what's on the other side. So of course he'd be cautious about, you know, letting humans have access to like magic, right? What are you gonna do if something goes wrong? Just making that power accessible to everybody? Like, you get how it could be like beneficial, but at the same time, given the corruption and greed in society, especially, like, I'm not even talking about like Zahn. Sure, that's a cesspool, but everyone knows what Zahn is. But Piltover, it's a different type of greed and corruption, something that's low-key, something that's political, something that you just can't get immediate control over. And it even shows how rampant corruption is even in the very courtroom, because right under Heimerdinger's nose, because a counselor just got bribed for like right in front of Heimerdinger, like in a low-key way, with the little toy that Medarda gave him. So it's right there, so it's understandable. But it also shows how Heimerdinger's kind of blinded as well. And I'm guessing like they're gonna expand on that, or we're gonna see more of that later on. So anyway, they're moving to exile Jace, but Jace's mother steps in and says, "My son isn't in his right mind. Find it in your heart to forgive him. He's been pursuing an impossible dream," just completely shitting on Jace's ambition. And it sucks because we've seen Jace's flashback and how magic essentially saved her life, right? And so this crushes Jace, completely destroys him. And I like the little scenes where they show how Jace is feeling without showing his face. The rune that the mage let him keep, the little runestone that he keeps, he wears it as a bracelet, like on his wrist. So whenever Jace is distressed, he starts rubbing the runestone, right? That's a way to comfort himself. And I thought that was a really nice touch, because at this point he's just utterly defeated. Instead of him getting exiled, he's banished. Well, he's just kicked out of the academy and sent to live off with his parents again. And just like that, his name is worthless now. No one wants anything to do with him. Like, when he even talks to his mom, he's like, how could you do that? Like I expect, like, you're my family and I expected you to stand up for me, but really you just went against me. And oh man, it sucks. Like, you really feel for Jace in this moment, because, like, if you can't even trust your family, like, who can you trust? So he says he'll find someone who will. So at this point, Jace is completely alienated. He goes to the Curaman residence to explain things, but they won't even open the gate for him. Only Caitlyn is out there, right? Jace is a misfit of society now. His name is dragged through the mud. No one wants anything to do with him. Even Caitlyn's mom see him. She tells Caitlyn, get away from him. He's done enough. And they won't even let him get away. So Jace, utterly defeated. I guess during the period in which we see him, he goes back to the one place where where his failure began, back to his lab. But we're going to stop right there, and we're going to go to another scene, because we're going to get to that part. So we're going back to the Heimerdinger's place, where we're introduced to where we see Victor again, and Victor's conversing with Heimerdinger, saying about, do you think it can really work? His research is interesting. Do you think it could be done? Professor, like, if the crystal is unstable, how come you don't stabilize it? Heimerdinger doesn't even, like, really acknowledge it. He's like, why would I do that? Like, this research is much too dangerous and it must be destroyed, and that's the last word of it. But Victor, the Victor we know, favorite character, he's a bit of a misfit himself, and he sees the value in Jace's work, and he's like, yeah, this would be such a waste for he thinks this would be a waste. Like, he doesn't specifically, like, you don't hear his thoughts, but you get the look on his face. And it's like, okay, Victor is on the same page Jace is, because throughout the trial, Victor was listening. He was like, what? Magic can be used by people? It can be done? That's insane. Because Victor's a cripple. You see him walking with the cane, and if there was an application to make it so that his pain or whatever his ailment is alleviated, why wouldn't you take it, you know? And not only that, they don't say it in the show quite yet, but I'm pretty sure that's gonna be a point that's brought up. Victor is originally from Zon, right? But we'll get to that part. So anyway, he takes a book, and that's the end of it. Since Heimer refuses to help, he goes to find Jace, right? So we're gonna get to those two meeting in, like, the last half. So next, what happens next? Back in Zon, the kids get away and the enforcers are cracking down. The guard that we got introduced to in episode 1, his name is Marcus, and he's kind of a dick. So he's going around just antagonizing people for no reason, looking for 4 kids, and he's not really getting anywhere. But this is Marcus's first encounter with I'm guessing the main villain of the series, I guess, Silco, who gives him a tip on where he could find the kids, and that leads Marcus to the last drop, Vander's bar. So they have the guards search the place, and while Marcus is there, he's kind of just antagonizing Vander. Takes his pipe, give me the strongest shit you got, pours him a drink. Vander lets the kids know, and they hide. So he's there antagonizing Vander, and Vander has the patience of a saint. I wonder if we're gonna get a fight scene with him at any point, but I want to see this man, like, unleashed, because they keep referencing his past, and and everyone's like just calling him weak and stuff now, even because he's taking the route of diplomacy and peace, and for good reasons that we're gonna get to like in a little bit. So anyway, they don't find anything. Marcus leaves. Everyone's mad. And him doing that kind of just stirred up more civil unrest. They're like, okay, enough of this bullshit. We're sick of Piltover and their enforcers. We need to fight, right? So the lanes are starting to come together. They're starting to get riled up at all of this. Vander's not going to give up any of his own. He's trying to make sure that that doesn't happen, because Vander has seen firsthand what happens. Like, nothing good comes of war. Even Vi is mad. She's like, okay, they came into our house and disrespected us. Why can't we fight? Vi's been saying they should fight since episode 1. But, and even Vander's own people are starting to turn against him. By calling him like a coward and whatnot. Like, he's not a real leader, he's a coward. But he doesn't care, he just keeps his composure. But when it comes to Vi and her wanting to fight, Echo spills the beans and tells Vander has a deal going on with the enforcer, and I guess he just gives her the details of that. So, when Vander and Vi meet again, Vi's calling Vander out about how he's a sellout and whatever. Vander's had enough of it, and he really needs to teach Vi this lesson. So he takes her to the place, which I assume is like a grave, like a gravestone where their parents were, where that incident took place, like at the very beginning of the series. And he's trying to temper Vi, and he says, you and me were the same. I was like you once. I was young, I was brash, I was angry, and I honestly, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, because he made it a point to say it in episode 1, like, hey, you have to think about people other than yourself. Like, if you say jump, they're gonna say how high. If you tell them to burn something down, they're gonna bring gasoline. He's trying to get Vi to understand actions have consequences. She has more influence than she knows, and nothing good comes from war, which is what the lanes are trying to start, and Vi's not having it. She's like, all my life they made, like, I was there when my parents were killed, and they made sure, and the enforcers were sure to remind me of my place down there at the bottom, but I don't want that. I don't want that for my sister, and I'm willing to fight for it. Right? I'm willing to fight for my sister. Vander manages to temper her rage, right? And telling her nothing good comes from war. You have to use your head, not just your fist. Because he's been there, he's done that, and he's like, Vi's like a daughter to Vander. At this point, he's their adoptive father, but he's still their, like, father nonetheless. And he knows what he's talking about. And you see that this gets through to Vi. And she asks, what do we do when the enforcers come back? Because eventually they will. Vander says, I'll take care of it like I always have. Right? And there's no more rage coming from Vi. She's quiet. She's somber now. So we cut back to the what's it called? The last drop, the bar. And I guess Vi's made up her mind about something. She said she goes to Powder. She talks to the other guys for a little bit, and she goes to Powder and she says, you're stronger than you are, and stuff like that, and just gives her words of reassurance. And then I guess she just leaves. And Powder knows what Vi's gonna do. She knows that she's gonna turn herself in, right? And she's sad about that. So, before we get to the last scene, let's jump back to Victor and Jace. So, Jace is back at his apartment that got blown up, and there's nothing. Man, he's at his lowest point. There's nothing left for him now, and you just get I don't know. You just feel his despair, because don't you feel like you had everything? You were at the top. You were pursuing your passion that could change the world. It's not even like about your ego, right? Not really. Well, as far as we know. But and then all of a sudden, all of that's taken from you, and you're cast out, and you're looked out you're looked down upon as an outcast in society now, and your name is worthless, and you can't do what you were born to do anymore. He's essentially purposeless now. And so Jace just takes off his his wristband with the rune stone on it, sets it on the table. Essentially, that's like his prized possession, because that is his work. That's his whole life's work, and now he can't pursue it anymore. But so he goes to the edge and readies himself, and as he's about to fall off, as he's about to like let himself fall off the edge, that's essentially to commit suicide, he's stopped by an unlikely person. Bird of a feather. Victor shows up and saves Jace's life. And catches Jace by surprise, but I love Victor's personality in this. You can tell that already the two sides of the same coin. Victor's kind of like this withdrawn, like individual, but he has kind of like this humor to him and kind of like this sass, and he's just as brilliant as Jace is, because he was the first one to see the immediate value in his work and came to ask Jace, is he sure that he can do it? And he has some ideas of his own, right? So one thing that I guess that sums up Victor's character. He's like, if you're gonna change the world, don't ask for permission. Like, I'm an outcast just like you. I know what it's like to be looked down upon. Like, when I got here, I didn't have anything, not a name, not a clan, nothing essentially, and he had to work his way up to the top. And he didn't want to be an assistant all his life either. Like, Victor got into this for science, and that's what he wants to do. And he sees an opportunity to change the world, and he would be a fool not to jump on the opportunity and help Jace as well. So an unlikely friendship is formed, and they team up. They're gonna help Victor perfect his hex tech theory, as he calls it. Oh, and we also get small hints about Jace's character as well, because as Victor says, well, you sign all your notes. A little bit egotistical, don't you think? To which Jace gets kind of offensive about that. Well, defensive about that. But yeah, there are hints that the Jace that we know is in there. He's not there quite yet. The dick that we know, it's Jace. He's in there. He's just not there quite yet. And then it's gonna be interesting to see how they get there, because we know that eventually Jace and Victor are gonna have a falling out due to a clash of ideals. I'm just wondering how they're gonna do that. But this is episode 2, and things seem to be going so smooth so far. So the last scene that we get to is with right where we left off. It's Powder. She's sad. Oh, we're back at the last drop, and this music is playing. It took me by surprise. It's called I'm Yours or something like that. I forgot what the song is called, but I thought it was like a track from Guardians of the Galaxy. You know what? I can't take it. I'm gonna look it up. I want to know that song. That's it. It's called there it is. It's called Our Love, and I thought that was a song from Guardians of the Galaxy because it just had that vibe. And I came to find out that song was actually made in-house, by Riot's music company. And I was like, whoever's on the music production team, they should all just get raises, because that is an instant classic in my book. That song is actually incredible. It just fit the mood, it fit the theme, and all of that, right? Like, as young Powder is coming to the bar, and Vander is there, he's like, oh, it's Powder, and pours her like a drink. I think that's chocolate milk or something like that, and just slowly like dips the straw in. They've done this before. It's like the routine. But Powder's, she's sad, and Vander gives her this look like, what's wrong? And then no words are spoken, but all of a sudden you see his eyes light up, and he realizes something's wrong, and it's probably going to be with Vi, because what else would get Powder sad like this, right? And actions have consequences, right? Things that we use, like I think it's called like the Chekhov's gun. The little tube thing I mentioned in episode 1 that was supposed to be used to contact what's her name, Grayson, the chief Piltover enforcer. That was used to contact Grayson by Vi, who plans to turn herself in. And I think Vander came to that realization because the last place he said it was actually under the under the bar where the drinks were, and I guess it wasn't there anymore because Vi took it. And the next time we see it, it shows up when Grayson is chewing out Marcus about going out and stirring up trouble with Zahn. Now, especially with him going to the last drop, and he's pretty much started a war, and he's a fool. And I can't wait to see him punished in the show, because at this moment, I hate Marcus. Like, he's just, I don't know, just something about corrupt cops. I just can't stand them. So, yeah, he's a scumbag, and he deserves it. So, Marcus screwed up, but they get the message, which I'm assuming is in fact from Vi, and they're going to arrest Vi. Now, before we get to the next part, something I forgot to mention was with Silco. He's back in his place with his assistant, and I'm growing more and more confident that the purple stuff that they're manufacturing is in fact from the void, because while they're down there with Deckard, they're looking, in the ocean, and then he's like, amazing, isn't it? People up top don't even know these exist, and you see like these big like sea monsters down there, and you see in the distance that there's like tentacles and stuff, like black tentacles. I'm assuming that there is, and because I kind of guessed it from episode 1, how the camera panned up when Powder threw the the loot into the water, and then you see the camera pan up, and you just see the lake, and with the moon reflecting off the surface. I was like, that brought me back to one of the lead short stories on Low Universe in the Freljord, where it's like essentially like an eye, which is a frozen watcher, right? It's a good story. If I remember the name, I'll let you know, but you should totally read it. It's a good read. So that made me think Void immediately. And now it's getting kind of, I guess in my head, more and more confirmed that, oh, there's Void under the ocean. And that's where, I guess they capture one of the sea creatures, and they're using the sea creature's blood to make this like mutagen, this mutagen drug that they, I don't know what they're gonna do with it yet. From what we've seen, Silco gets Deckard to take the drug, just like he did with the rat, right? And I was correct in my observation, saying that it's either gonna be Vander that's gonna take it, or Deckard, because he said, oh, I think we might have a volunteer at the end of episode 1. Turns out it is Deckard. So he takes the drug, and he starts like roiding out, and he has his hang-ups, and we get more of a look at the scientist. He doesn't say anything, but I'm pretty sure that's Singed. His name hasn't been said yet, but I'm pretty sure that's Singed, because that's the only chemist that we know in Zahn. So I'm just gonna keep saying it's Singed till it's confirmed. But he takes the stuff and he turns purple, and that's the last we see of him. So he might appear again, and actually more than likely will appear again in episode 3. So the enforcers are moving in. They're going door to door, and they're looking for the place where Vi is. And while the music is playing, it's called Our Love. The door's opening, and you just see Vi just sitting there, and she stands up, and she's like, okay, she's ready to be taken. But then you see her eyes get wide, and then the camera fades to black as the music is playing, and that's the end. My theory, I think that it's not the enforcers that are there, because the way her eyes got wide at the end, I think it's someone she knows. I think it'd probably be Vander that showed up, in my opinion. Otherwise, why would her eyes get like kind of like whitish like that? And two, Silco's plan. I think Silco knows what's going on. So I don't know. There might be something going on in the next act involving that, since he made Deckard take the stuff, which means that he's probably preparing for a confrontation, because apparently he has he might have some beef with Vander, as we've seen in episode 1, and how he's taken an interest in him and getting his kids taken away and whatnot. I want to see more of Silco and his motivations and stuff fleshed out, but essentially that's what happens. That's the end of episode 2, and it's been amazing, and I can't wait to get to episode 3. So far it's been a roller coaster, and I can't wait to see more. So if you haven't seen this series yet, watch it. And if you have, comment below, let me know your favorite like moments in this show, what you think about it. Let's just talk about it, like a back and forth. Let's do that. But that's all I got, and until then, I'll see you during the next one. So bye now, and take care of yourself. See you during episode 3, so look forward to that.